Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, and this is a show where we hang out and we talk about games. We talk about things that inspire us in gaming, things that are beautiful in gaming. And yeah, we're continuing a series right now on Wrath and Glory, the Cubicle 7 Warhammer 40K role-playing game that is a bit more heroic, which I like. I think it's interesting. So Cubicle 7 just announced they've renewed their partnership with Games Workshop, and I and my groaning bookshelves are very glad about that. But again, you have the two game lines, Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40K, and in each you have a D6 pool, more heroic version of the game, Wrath and Glory and Soulbound, which I guess is technically in the 8 realms as opposed to the old world, but it's still fantasy. And then you have a D100 Grim and Grittier game in Imperial Maledictum and Warhammer Fantasy. So, yeah. So good morning to everyone. To Rook, thank you for the subscription. To Padre and John and Tink, thanks for noticing my sweet Deadlands t-shirt, Tink. I am wearing it for several reasons. One, to break it in for GameholeCon, and two, because, next week we're going to be talking about Deadlands, thanks to John Doom and his inspired recommendation. So, Padre, I do love that quote. A good plan executed violently today is better than a perfect plan next week. So, we're going to continue talking about Warhammer this 40K this week, Wrath and Glory specifically. Today we're talking about tiers and characters, and Thursday we're going to be talking about Wrath and also Glory. The core mechanics of the game, the meta currency. And then we're going to take a break for the entire month of October from our Wrath and Glory look. We'll be back in November to kind of wrap up our look at Wrath and Glory because, Rook, thank you again for your generosity, sir. And welcome to Pencil Mage and Happy Haley Face as to the channel. October, we're going to be looking at a lot of scary games. The first one we're going to be looking at is Deadlands Lost Colony next week, as well as the Maw of Oblivion plot point campaign. Maw of Oblivion plot point campaign. Just rolls right off the tongue. Then I've got a couple of weeks where I'm going to be off on Thursday, but we're going to be looking at some pretty interesting games between then. We're going to be looking at a new role-playing game called Mirror Side. And then, because of the discussion I had on the Savage Universe stream last night, I'm going to be looking at Dead End by Atomic Ninja Studios, a Savage Worlds game that seeks to replicate George Romero style zombies, and can't wait to see how that is that's going to turn out. So let's get into Wrath and Glory. So as we talked about with all of the different factions last time, there's a broad swath of the 40K universe that Wrath and Glory really tries to cover. It tries to cover everything from lowly humans living in the Imperium all the way up to Primaris Space Marines, which make regular Space Marines look like they're, prepubescent kid brothers. So we're going to be the way they handle that is by tiers. So you have several dials as the GM to set your game. We talked about one on Thursday last week, the framework. But there's also tier. You as the GM can say, okay, hey guys, we're playing this tier of game. And it's a relative aspect of power. So tier 1 characters are your starting human characters. Tier 3 allows you to bring in things like Space Marines, and then Tier 4 kind of reserved for the Primaris Marines. And what's great about this game is the tier is not as restrictive as it may sound. Because when you select a character, you can pick anything at the tier the GM set or lower. And so say your GM sets a game of at Tier 3, so Space Marine kind of being the baseline power level. And you're like, man, I really want to play an Imperial Guardsman, which is a Tier 1 character. Well, then after you build your character, you get a chunk of XP to spend to bring your Guardsman up to the level of a Space Marine. So the Space Marine is going to have more raw power, but you as the Guardsman with all that extra XP, you're going to have more talents, more skills, different attributes. And so you're not just going to be a guardsman, you're probably going to be the hero of Gilead Primus, or you know, Carl Ironjaw, who took a punch from an orc warlord and survived. So that way you can kind of spread out um, the amount of like different types of characters. So you're bound by faction and keyword, but you're not as restricted by tier. You can't go up. So you couldn't play a tier 3 character if the GM says, hey, we're going to play a tier 1 or tier 2 game. But you can take the other characters if you like the concept of the archetype and kind of lift them up. John Doom said, regarding scary games, local Savage Worlds GM ran a Deadlands and Barovia Domain of Dread. Wow. Man, that's really cool. I would play in an 1880s version of Death House in a heartbeat. And especially because Barovia always has this more Renaissance feel to it. Less like strict pseudo-medieval and more, right, you have guns. I feel like moving it even just a little bit further into the Deadlands era would be perfect. At least until, some more Deadlands supplements come out. Problem I have is Landauer does all of the spoilers, and so I never am aware of if things he's talked about are actual spoilers or like spoilers. So I just let him do that. We're actually possibly going to be doing a stream later this week. If we do, Landauer and I are going to get on and do a little video recording. When it goes live, I'll make sure to let all of the iconic patrons know. Oh, second edition Barovia Rook had a more distinctly beyond Middle Ages flair, with flintlock pistols and rifles and that sort of thing. It was definitely getting into the age of gunpowder in Barovia, which sort of added to the dread, because you look at it and as a player and you're like, sweet, I've gone from swords and crossbows to rapiers and flintlocks, and it doesn't matter because the werewolves don't care, and neither do the vampires. But I think it leans into the silver bullet mentality of kind of the gothic horror. So let's take a look at a couple of archetypes to kind of show the difference between the different tiers and see what else what's available as a as a player character in Wrath and Glory. One last Ravenloft story from my 2E days. The group first translated into the Mists, and I didn't tell them that they were rifles or pistols. I just said there was a group of villagers coming up with strange wands and staves, and they thought that they were gonna just roll over this group of villagers until the first one fired, and then the players were quite shocked that there were firearms in that world. All right, so this is a sample tier 1 character. This is the Sister Hospitaller, a battlefield healer of both mind and soul. You ministrate to the injured with great Medicae experience and inspire the pious with your cavernous well of faith. So when you look at this little block, so you get the information on the archetype, and then you get this block, and it tells you, hey, what's the species, or what's the tier, what's the species, and how much XP does it cost? Because really, when you're building a character in Wrath and Glory, you get a chunk of XP depending on your tier, and you spend it on your species or you spend it on your archetype. And if you want to, you can completely freeform build a character. I would recommend probably most people should wait until after they've got at least one character under their belt, or perhaps if they are an expert at the universe of Warhammer 40,000. It gives you what keywords you start with, as well as your attributes, skills, archetype abilities, war gear, and then kind of your suggested attributes, skills, and talents if you want to go that way. Talents essentially work like feats. Skills skill plus attribute is the die pool that you get to roll. And every one of these archetypes has a very thematic archetype ability. So, for example, the archetype ability of the Sister Hospitaller is Loyal Compassion. You get to add double your rank. Characters start off as rank 1. Again, much like in Soulbound, we have things that sort of overlap. So, tier represents the overall power of the game, and rank is sort of like level as you go up. So you can add double your rank in bonus dice whenever you make a Medicae test on an Imperium character. So these Hospitars are better at treating people from the Imperium. And I like that they've broken this up. I think they broke this up into by tier. So you have the Sister Hospitaller, a Ministorum Priest. Let's see if I can get this to work right. An Imperial Guardsman, the backbone of the Emperor, if you ask me. Inquisitorial Acolyte, somebody who works for the Inquisition. Or a Sage, Inquisitorial Sage. These are all tier 1. And then you have the Ganger, so if you're a fan of Necromunda, you can play as a Ganger. And if you don't want to go Imperium, you can play an Eldari. You can play a Corsair. I love their archetype ability, Dancing on the Blade's Edge. You throw yourself into danger with a reckless abandon to hide your ancestral fears. You get plus rank bonus dice whenever you make or resist an athletics or persuasion attack. You suffer +1 difficulty number to penalties for fear tests. And for Rook, you can also play as an Orc Boy. These are all tier 1. So that's everything at tier 1 that you could play if your GM just said, hey, we're stopping at tier 1. At tier 2, you get to see the Sisters of Battle, the Sanctioned Psyker, the Skitaris, the terrifying... every time I discover something new about the 40k universe, I am surprised at the level of darkness that is there, and I'm surprised at my ability to still be surprised. So the Skitaris are the infantry of the Mechanicum, and they are drawn from the ranks of the Imperium of those who suffer some injury that would prevent them from being useful to the Imperium. They are given augments, and they find themselves in the Skitaris Legion. And that sounds like a great escape for a lot of people. In fact, in Litanies of the Lost, there is I believe it's Litanies of the Lost, or it's the GM screen, there's actually an adventure that revolves around a gang who inflicts the kinds of wounds and crippling that would get you into the Skitaris Legion for a price. So if you want out, you can pay this gang to cripple you in such a way that the Skitaris Legion thinks you're a good candidate for their army. The problem being, they mind wipe you, and they basically make you a human automaton soldier in their army. So it's not the escape that they thought. Death Cult Assassins, Tempestus Scion. These are the shock troopers of the Imperium. You can play a rogue trader, a Scavy, a Space Marine Scout. This is our first introductions to the Adaptus Astartes. These are Space Marines who are in the process of becoming Space Marines. They've had the gene seeds implantations. They've had some of the augments. They are being trained in the ways of being a Legionnaire. Stepping outside of the Imperium, you have the Ranger. And then for Rook, the Commando. Archetype ability, Cunning Plan. You and any of your allies with the Orc keyword within 15 meters of you gain plus rank bonus dice on all stealth tests. Just by being around, you make all or other orcs stealthy. And I love the homemade potato masher bomb that he has, which is just a chunk of dynamite sticks wrapped around what seems to be a metal handle. Moving into tier 3, We have the Tech Priests. I love the Mechanicum. If I were going to play another Imperium army, I would go Mechanicus. You can play the Crusader, one of the warrior monks of the Ecclesiarchy. You can play a Commissar. And if you've ever played the Warhammer 40k miniature game and you've played with the Imperial Guard, Commissars are they're a morale officer, but they're a morale officer through violence. If your lieutenant in the miniature game, if you fail a leadership check, but you have a commissar in there, in that unit, you can have the commissar kill the lieutenant leading the platoon and re-roll the leadership test with the commissar's leadership. Essentially, you execute the person who is going to flee in the face of something terrifying, and you take over. And their archetype ability, Fearsome Respect, you and any allies within 15 meters of you that can see you may add double your rank bonus dice to resolve tests. And you add double your rank bonus dice to any intimidation test, including intimidation interaction attacks. Now, tier 3 is actually, I think, where the game hums. I could see why I would want to play a tier 1 or 2 campaign. But really, if I was going to play a tier 1 campaign, I would play Imperium Maledictives, which I'll do a review on when I get the physical book in my hands. But in addition to all of that, you have your Desperado. I'm not going to sing it as much as I know that you would love me to do that. You have your Tactical Space Marine. So this is the Emperor's Angel, and you have a lot of options for playing a Space Marine. In fact, when you pick your species as a Space Marine, you get to pick what legion you are from. And the legions you have to choose from, each with their own benefit and penalty. You have the Blood Angels, the Dark Angels, the Imperial Fists, the Iron Hands, the Raven Guard, the Salamanders, the Space Wolves, the Ultramarines, and the White Scars. Rather than going through all of the Gene Seed Space Marine implants, of which there are, I think, 22, they just say, hey, you have Space Marine implants. Whenever you could justify the Space Marine implants giving you a bonus, you do. Archetype ability, Tactical Versatility. Your training has prepared you for any circumstance. When you make a critical hit, you may roll twice on the critical hit table and choose either result. I think that's a change from the first edition of Wrath and Glory, where I think the Space Marine got a bonus versus hordes. In this case, you know how to critically wound your enemy, and I kind of like that. You can play an Eldar Warlock, having played a lot of Eldar in the 40k war game, specifically the Ulthwé craft world. I've painted a lot of Warlocks in my day. Padre, you would play a Space Wolf. And the Salamanders, man, Rook, you know, what I love about the Salamanders, in addition to all of their flame and plasma weapons, or flame and melta weapons, I love the fact that the Salamanders are, like, one of their defining character traits is they remember that their job is to guard humanity. Not just win battles for the Emperor, but actually to guard and safeguard humanity. And they are seen often as the most human of the Space Marines. Padre, the new Space Wolf models, almost enough to get me to play Space Wolves. Almost. Rook, there you go, buddy. The Orc Knob. Larger, stronger than most orcs, your uncanny size and brawn earn a natural place of violently ruling over other boys. And then at tier 4, we have only 2 options. You have the Inquisitor. You can play as an Inquisitor, and I think it'd be kind of cool if you could get the one guy in your group who has the ton of 40k lore, but is, you know, I would need them to kind of be a little bit more understanding in their role, but get that one person to play the Inquisitor and maybe use them almost as a co-GM, and then everyone else gets to play members of the Inquisitorial retinue. I think that would be pretty awesome. And then you have the Primaris Intercessor, the massive new Space Marines brought into play by Roberto Guillemon. Just larger Space Marines. I think it was actually, they were actually introduced to make Space Marines true 28 millimeter compared, scale. Because the old Space Marines were larger than the Imperial Guard, but not really as large as they were supposed to be in the canon. And so the Primaris Marines allowed them to sort of hand wave the miniature change. And that's not all. If you go into Church of Steel, there's new archetypes. There's, that's something that they're going to be able to push out more of. But you get a broad swath of things to play. Granted, a lot of this is leaning into the Imperium side of things. You'll notice that there's, maybe 2 or 3 Eldar, 3 or 4 Orcs, and that's kind of it. You can play Kroot now, though, which is kind of cool. Not Tau yet, but you can definitely play Kroot. And of course, you can play Chaos versions of basically anything. You can play like a Rogue Psyker. You can play, a Chaos Space Marine, which are fun for me in short games. I once had this idea of running Black Crusade, and if you go back and watch our Wrath and Glory 2-shot that we did, maybe it was a 1-shot, 1 or 2 shots on the Iconic Production channel. I'll try and put a link to the card in this for YouTube. That was the introduction to the Black Crusade game I ran. You're all members of an Imperial prison planet. You deserve to be there, and Abaddon shows up and gives you the choice. Join the Black Crusade, or die. I figured, why not? If I was going to run Wrath and Glory, why not give this idea a shot? So, that is Wrath and Glory character options. We got one more look at Wrath and Glory this month, and that's going to be the core rules and mechanics for it. What Wrath does, what Glory does, how to, play the game. Just kind of a generic or a brief overview of it. When we come back in November, I want to look at Psychers, and then I want to look at the books that are out for it. But again, the reason we're doing this deep dive is because we held a poll, and Wrath and Glory won pretty handedly. Now, we're looking at making some changes to the Iconic Patreon and the Iconic Discord channel, involving some more polls. Those should be going up in October, so if you'd like to be involved in how Iconic changes and continues to evolve, jump over to the Iconic Discord. If you're not a member of the Iconic Discord, it's probably because you're not a member of the Iconic Patronage, but you can jump over to patreon.com/Iconic Production and join us there. Also, we're continuing to grow. We've had substantial growth over the summer, and I think in no small part to our new social media coordinator and helper, Tink. Tink, thank you so much. And we're rapidly approaching 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed to the channel and you like what we're doing here, please give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. When we get to 1,000, we're giving away a big box of Fading Suns, the latest edition of Fading Suns from Ulysses Spiel. Got a complete Kickstarter bundle, 6 books, a GM screen, and a player pack, ready to be shipped out to one of our 1,000 subscribers when we hit that. So, let's see here what we had in the chat. What cult, Padre? See, if I had unlimited time and money, I would definitely go back and do my Word Bearers Legion. They were just so time intensive to paint because 5 layers of red going from black to scab red and then highlighting with blood red just took forever. John has a bunch of Malifaux figures, which is when you learn you don't have time for skirmish tabletop war games. That's fair. You just come over to the studio, John, and we'll play some Conquest. I'm in the process of painting them up, and then you don't have to worry about buying minis. You can just come over and play with the war games I have set up. Padre needs to finish writing his Torg miniatures game. Yes, Padre. If you finish that up, let me know. I might know who to pass that on to. Tink is the best. Huzzah, Tink. Huzzah. So, that's it for today. Until Thursday, everyone, thank you all for joining. Stay safe, stay gaming, stay safe, stay gaming, Stay safe, safe. I lost my rhythm, and we're just going to move past that. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. There we go. I'm JM. This has been Behind the Screen. Until Thursday, have a good one, everyone.